U.S. President Donald Trump is set to sign off on a budget deal for the remainder of the financial year. Trump has been forced to backtrack on his plans to cut the humanitarian aid allocation by 28%. The decision comes after the U.S. Congress voted against his proposal to cut aid to Africa. During budget negotiations, Democrats managed to persuade Republicans to include $990 million of additional spending to help counter famine-like conditions in South Sudan, Somalia, Nigeria, and Yemen. Aid agencies are praising this decision. It covers about a quarter of the United Nations global appeal for the four countries. The U.S. is the largest contributor to the UN, paying 22% of the organization's $5.4 billion annual budget. Now, joining us now for more on this from Johannesburg is Brooks Spector. He is a former U.S. diplomat and international relations expert. Now, I'll begin by asking, what is the likely impact of the nearly $1 billion in relief aid which the U.S. is set to advance to these three African countries in Yemen?
Well, I mean, first of all, and perhaps most importantly, it's going to help the people in the countries that are affected by drought and famine. But I think there's a second tier level of things going on, and this helps to refocus in some way and at some level the attention of the new U.S. administration on the idea that they must be participating and supportive members of an international community. Coming into office, Donald Trump had threatened to cut back on U.S. contributions to the various international and UN relief agencies, to dial back on American aid that was given in bilateral circumstances. This may well mark a return to the more traditional, the more normal, the more standard approach towards supporting these kinds of things. Obviously, relief and famine aid comes in circumstances that you really can't predict or plan for. And so these contributions from countries that can do it, like the United States, become ever more vital and important.
Now, it would seem like there has been a gradual warming up to the needs of Africa by the U.S. President's administration. Should the continent now expect more financial support, or is this likely to be just limited to humanitarian aid?
Well, I think you have to see the Trump administration's view of Africa in the context of the things that it has already said it is interested in. And one of those, most importantly, have been counterterrorism efforts, international security efforts. And I think it's fair to say, and I've explained this in any number of other circumstances, that that is largely where the Trump administration hopes to be in terms of its dealings with Africa, that and pursuing the kinds of bilateral trade arrangements that are, in the Trump administration's words, directly beneficial to American consumers, American producers. But I do think that you're seeing as I said earlier, a gradual shift, a return, a rebalancing of a realization that Africa remains important to American interests. And so you may well see over time, because Congress generally, people in Congress and people in the bureaucracy as well, think of Africa as a continent and the nations therein that require American participation and support in many cases, such as these famine and relief expenses and expenditures that you're going to see in the new budget that has just been agreed to.
And finally, it is likely that this disbursement of U.S. aid is likely to come with conditionalities. What would you say these entail?
Well, conditionalities have been an integral part of U.S. aid for many years, and typically they include things like a requirement that to the maximum extent possible, any materials and supplies that are procured for the programs are supplied from the United States. Wherever possible and whenever possible, the technical assistance that's involved in it comes from American experts and companies that provide that kind of service, as well as in many cases the understanding that the aid comes with careful evaluation, careful management and monitoring so that it isn't, in a word, stolen. And I don't think that you would see anything different. In fact, in the Trump administration, I can only imagine there will be ever more interest in managing the conditionalities that go with foreign assistance. Let me just add that foreign assistance conditionalities are not unique to the United States. Most countries that provide foreign assistance always have a series of conditions, requirements, and circumstances that meet various pressures both domestically as well as international good governance standards. That's not unique, but I certainly don't think that we'll see any of it fading away. Rather, that we'll see more focus on it than we have even in the past.
All right, we will leave it there for now. Thank you very much for speaking to us. That was Brooks Spector, former U.S. diplomat and international relations expert.